What happens when parents help with homework? Good morning, good night, good afternoon. My name's Chuck. I'm an educator with a new job this year and a new commute, and filling up the time with this new podcast. Thanks for coming along. Shotgun on today's Drive Time Diary. Something happened yesterday in my home that I think is very common for parent and child relationships, interactions. So if you're a parent, you've probably experienced this if your kids are in school. If you are a student or were a student in the past, then you probably also experienced this. Speaking from my parent side and my teacher side today. But if you are not aware, there are 4 children that live in my home that belong to me. It's a weird way to say I have 4 kids. And my wife stays home and homeschools us. All 4 of them, we are homeschool, with the exception of some gifted programming. It's pretty much what they've done their whole life. It's homeschool, and it works great for us. The kids love it. Lots of positives, not really any negatives for us, at least. So that's what we do. One of my kids is in Algebra right now, and they were doing some problems with, I think this was even just a review problem, but it was a problem with 2 unknowns, so 2 variables. And it was a word problem, and it was very difficult. And so math for this child happens in the afternoon, usually sometime about 2 o'clock, sometimes 3 if they're kind of complaining and dragging their feet about it. But sometime about 3 yesterday, I get a text with pretty much an SOS from my wife, and the text of this word problem that my child was doing. And my wife had been like, can you figure this out? I can't figure it out on my own. ChatGPT couldn't figure it out either. We are super frustrated and stuck. And that's a very common place for you to be as a parent or a child, right? Student, teenager. Teacher has assigned work. I mean, in this case, my wife was the one who assigned it, but she was just following our curriculum, which is a thing that myself as a teacher would do also. But so you get your homework, you're working on a problem, and you as the student are just completely stuck. And you as the parent are in one of several situations. Maybe you feel very confident in math, but you just can't figure it out, so you're stumped. Maybe you don't feel confident in math, and so you're stuck. Maybe it's just been forever since you took algebra, and you forgot all the little ins and outs of the ways that problems might be set up, and so you are stuck in there. And maybe you struggle through this problem with your child, your student, or students. Maybe you sit there with your parents for some amount of time, and you all try to figure it out, and you just can't. It's a super awful position to be into. It's incredibly frustrating as the adult, frustrating as the student, all these things. So this was happening in my home while I was at work yesterday, and my child apparently was kind of mean to her mom, and was like questioning if she could do math. She has more college math credits than I do. She's incredibly smart. That wasn't the problem. It was just a really difficult problem. And so it took me, myself, the math teacher currently teaching algebra, who knows how these problems are built, it took me about an hour to really figure out this problem so that I was comfortable, A, in a way that I got to the answer, and B, in a way that I could explain it to somebody else. And so I don't even know where else to land this episode other than to say, on behalf of teachers, when that happens, sorry. How did this problem get into the algebra curriculum at my house? I don't know. I mean, obviously some math educator thought that it was a necessary problem for algebra students to do. It was a harder problem than I would ever give anyone in my class. But it was a good problem. It was one that really tests if you can do math. It was definitely I would give this problem to one of my highest performing students that was really looking for a challenge, and maybe they could get there. I don't even know if I would have given this problem to my highest performing group of students and expected them to get it. I would have been more interested just in the things that they tried. It would have been about the looking into their problem solving process and seeing what things they did, how long they worked on it. That's the way I would have used this problem. But to actually solve it, this was incredibly difficult. If this even showed up on an end of course exam, this kind of problem, we would have been talking about it as an unfair question in the math department. I guess from the parent, or two parents and or students in algebra, at that point, I just always want to encourage you to just reach out to the teacher when this happens to you, just like my wife did. Reach out to the educator, and I'm sure that they can give you extra tips for that. I mean, that's a thing that I would do. And or another thing that happened to me as the educator, they might be able to say, yeah, that problem's messed up and wrong, which is an email that I sent to a student yesterday in the midst of recognizing that the word problem at my house was really difficult. But we did get there. The key that unlocked this question for me was I went back to formulas and formatting. So that's one tip specifically for math students and or parents of math students that I want to give you. Go back to formulas. This problem was about interest. So I went back to the format of the interest formula that I know is on algebra formula sheets. I equals P times R times T. I went back to that and really defined my variables, which means I'm really figuring out what I is, what P is, what R is. And then in that defining of those variables, then I was able to build two different equations. Once I finally felt pretty confident in those equations that I had built, then I was able to combine those two equations and solve them like a system of equations. And we finally got there, but it really took all of my algebra solving strengths. And, I would hope that my algebra solving strengths are probably higher than the typical parent. And so if you've ever felt that way as a student or a parent, my empathy for you, and just want to remind you to just always reach out to somebody if you need a hand. Don't struggle for too long in a prideful state. Another thing that kind of made me sad about yesterday was my wife didn't want me to see her work. She was embarrassed, and then this morning I just happened to be looking at it because it was still on our kitchen table, and she had pretty much gone through a lot of the same things I had tried first before I finally got to the answer. And so another reason to share our work and write down our work is that someone else can validate that they went through the same journey and made they did something similar on their path to the right answer, and B, that person can give you feedback on maybe what was right about what you did and where there was an error in what you did, and that's always helpful too. As always on this podcast, I'm always pro-parent and pro-parent partnership, and so that was part of the key to doing that for my son today or yesterday. This whole episode I was trying to keep that gender neutral, so it was one of my sons. And yeah, so we finally got to the solution for him because his parent at home reached out to the teacher, I guess, I don't know, that's fuzzy because she's really his main teacher and she does a great job with that, but she needed a different teacher, and we found success in that. So that's all for today. I am in the parking lot, so this episode has to finish. Thanks for coming along on today's drive. I'd love to hear what you think about hard math problems or stories that you have from your parents struggling through a math problem, or parents you doing the same. Hit me on the X at Chuck C. Baker, or that's Twitter if you are unfamiliar, or Instagram at Mr. C. Baker for Math, or at Drive Time Diary, or in real life, or text messages, all those things. We'll see you on the next drive. Stay safe.